Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that at just 17 years old, Susan B. Anthony was already gathering signatures for anti-slavery petitions? Learn how she joined Elizabeth Cady Stanton and collected nearly 400,000 signatures to support ending slavery. Discover that when she was arrested in 1872 for voting, she refused to pay her fine and declared that the Constitution gave her the right to vote.
Okay, picture a silver dollar. You know the one I'm talking about. From 1979.
Oh, yeah.
It's got that really stern profile of a woman, hair pulled back, super tight. She looks serious.
The Susan B. Anthony dollar.
Exactly. And for most of us, that's kind of it. That's the whole relationship. She's the suffrage lady.
Yep.
A static black and white photo in our heads.
Right. But when you actually dig into the source material, the biographies, the court records, all of it, that image is, it's really misleading.
It really is.
It reduces, a truly radical political operative to a mascot. When you look at the archives, you don't find some polite old lady asking for a favor.
No.
You find a relentless, grinding strategist who basically re-architected American democracy.
And that's the angle for today's deep dive. We're not just doing a biography. We're breaking down her method.
Her strategy.
Yeah, how does someone with literally zero political power, I mean, for half her life, she didn't even legally own her own wages. How does she manage to twist the arm of the entire U.S. government?
It's a masterclass in organizing. We're going to look at her partnerships, especially with Elizabeth Cady Stanton, their media strategy, the legal battles.
So let's start at the very beginning. Where does this specific brand of radicalism even come from? Because you don't just wake up one day and decide to fight the Constitution.
You really have to look at the soil she grew up in. Susan B. Anthony was born in February 1820 in Adams, Massachusetts. And the single most important data point about her early life is that she was raised Quakers.
Okay, a religious upbringing. But how does that translate to activism?
Well, you have to understand the specific flavor of Quakerism she was steeped in. The core tenet is that everyone has an inner light, that everyone is equal under God.
Right.
But for the Anthonys, that wasn't just, a nice thing to say in meeting. It was a moral absolute. It was the bedrock of her entire worldview.
So if everyone is equal in the eyes of God,
then laws that create hierarchy, whether it's based on race or gender, aren't just unfair. They're basically sins.
So her activism was spiritual before it was political.
Precisely. And her family was walking the walk. Her father was a cotton mill owner, but he refused to buy cotton produced by slave labor. Wow. Just think about the economic hit that implies in the mid-19th century. He was putting his conscience way ahead of his profit margin.
That's significant. It shows she grew up watching principles actually cost something.
And the guest list at their dinner table. It wasn't just neighbors. We're talking about heavy hitters like Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison.
Hold on. She's a teenager passing potatoes to Frederick Douglass.
Yes. These were the circles they moved in. Her mother's family fought in the American Revolution. Her siblings were all active in the anti-slavery movement. The dinner table conversations must have been incredible.
No kidding. And she got involved pretty early, didn't she?
Oh, yeah. By age 17, she was already out collecting signatures for anti-slavery petitions.
So before she was the face of women's suffrage, she was an abolitionist.
Deeply. In 1856, she became the New York State agent for the American Anti-Slavery Society. She faced mobs, had things thrown at her, was burned in effigy.
So she cut her teeth on abolition.
She did. For her, racial equality and women's social equality were just two parts of the same fight for human rights. She didn't see them in silos.
Okay, so she has the moral compass, she has the toughness, but every great operator needs a co-founder.
And this is where the story just ignites. In 1851, she meets Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And this might be one of the most effective partnerships in the history of social change.
I love this duo. From what I've read, they were total opposites in a lot of ways.
In terms of their skill sets, absolutely. If they were launching a startup today, Stanton would be the visionary founder and Anthony would be the COO.
Break that down for us. What was the division of labor?
Well, Stanton was the philosopher, the writer. She had the rhetorical flourish. She drafted the arguments, the big ideas, the thinker.
Right, and she was often at home with her 7 kids, so she was doing all this writing.
Exactly. And Anthony?
She was the doer.
Completely. The organizational genius. She understood logistics, how to mobilize people. She was single, she could travel, and she knew how to take Stanton's brilliant ideas and actually make them happen.
She rented the halls, printed the pamphlets.
Booked the trains, organized the petition drives. It's the perfect vision and execution dynamic. One writes the speech, the other makes sure there's an audience to hear it.
And to understand what they were fighting for, we have to look back just a little bit before they met, right? To 1848.
To the Seneca Falls Convention.
Anthony wasn't there, was she?
No, but her mother and sister were. And that's where Stanton presented the Declaration of Sentiments.
Such a power move. They patterned it directly after the Declaration of Independence.
It was a brilliant rhetorical strategy. They took this sacred text of American liberty and just edited it to tell the whole truth.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal.
Gives you chills, doesn't it? It's so simple, but so subversive. It's basically saying, hey, you forgot half the country.
And they listed all the injustices, but the real kicker, the thing that was considered way too radical at the time, was Resolution 9.
Resolution 9.
That a demand for the right to vote.
The elective franchise. Even among other reformers, that was seen as going too far. They thought asking for the vote would make them look ridiculous.
But Stanton pushed it through, and once Anthony got on board, that became their North Star.
It did. And once they teamed up in 51, the speed of execution was just dizzying. The list of organizations they launched is exhausting.
It really shows their momentum.
1852, the New York Women's State Temperance Society. 1863, during the Civil War, the Women's Loyal National League.
And the Loyal National League was not some small club.
Far from it. This is a perfect example of Anthony's genius. They decided to support the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery, so Anthony organized a drive that collected nearly 400,000 signatures.
Just stop and think about the logistics of that in 1863. No internet, no email, just sheer physical grind.
It proved women were a political force to be reckoned with, even without the vote. It showed they could mobilize at scale.
And then they launched a newspaper.
Called The Revolution.
Not a subtle name.
They weren't trying to be subtle. The motto was, men, their rights, and nothing more. Women, their rights, and nothing less.
That's a tagline, but this brings us to a really difficult moment, a split in the movement.
Right, because after the Civil War, the 15th Amendment comes up.
This is the one that gave black men the vote.
Yes, but it explicitly introduced the word male into the Constitution regarding voting rights for the first time.
And Anthony and Stan were furious.
They were. They'd paused their own fight to support abolition, expecting universal suffrage would follow. When they were told women have to wait, they refused to support it.
Which alienated a lot of their allies.
It was ugly. But for Anthony, it was a pragmatic political decision. She would not accept a half measure that enshrined gender discrimination in the Constitution.
So they broke away.
In 1869, they formed the National Woman Suffrage Association, the NWSA. They were the radicals, pushing for a federal amendment.
But Anthony wasn't just going to hold meetings. And this leads to my favorite part of the story. The year is 1872.
The election. And Susan B. Anthony decides to do something shocking. She gets a group of women in Rochester, New York, walks into the voter registration office, and demands to be registered.
I can just see the poll workers' faces. Ma'am, you can't do that. And she's just like, watch me.
She actually read the 14th Amendment to them, arguing that as a citizen, she had the right to vote. She basically bullied them into registering her.
And she voted.
She cast her ballot for Ulysses S. Grant. And then, of course, the hammer came down.
She was arrested.
Immediately by a U.S. deputy marshal. But this is where the strategy kicks in. Anthony wanted the trial. She toured the entire county giving a speech called, "Is it a crime for a U.S. citizen to vote?"
She was educating the public and tainting the jury pool.
She was turning her arrest into a national stage. And when the trial happened, the judge was clearly biased. He didn't even let the jury deliberate. He just directed a guilty verdict.
Which sounds completely illegal.
It was questionable. But then came the sentencing. He asked if she had anything to say.
Big mistake.
Huge mistake. She just unleashed on him, talking about how her rights were being trampled. He tried to shut her up, but she kept going. Finally, he fined her $100.
And she gives that legendary response, "I shall never pay $1 of your unjust penalty."
And she never did. But here's the really clever part you need to catch. The judge was tricky.
How so?
If he'd thrown her in jail for not paying the fine, she could have appealed to the Supreme Court.
Oh, she wanted that.
She was desperate for it. She wanted the Supreme Court to rule on women's suffrage.
So by not jailing her?
He blocked her path. He contained the legal question. She won the moral victory, but the legal door was slammed shut.
That is fascinating. It wasn't mercy, it was a containment strategy.
Exactly. So if the courts wouldn't work, she had to go to the lawmakers. And this is where we talk about the grind.
I read this in the notes and my jaw just dropped. She appeared before every single Congress from 1869 to 1906.
Every one. For nearly 40 years. Just imagine the tenacity. To pack your bags, go to D.C., face a room of men who mostly despise you, get rejected, and then say, okay, see you next year.
It's the definition of persistence. And during that time, she was also working to unify the women's movement itself.
Yes. Remember that split. By 1890, Anthony was the driving force behind merging the two rival groups back together.
The NWSA and the other group.
Right. They combined to form the National American Women's Suffrage Association.
Yeah.
She prioritized the goal over the grudge. She understood a divided movement would never win.
And it's important to remember, this was all happening in a broader context. Women were organizing everywhere.
That's a great point. The sources mention the Nauvoo Female Relief Society, established way back in 1842.
Wow, that's even before Seneca Falls.
It is. And today it's cited as the world's oldest and largest women's organization. So you have this swelling tide of women organizing for all sorts of reasons. Anthony was the spearhead for the vote, but she was part of a massive cultural shift.
So she's this unifier, this strategist, this lobbyist. But, and this is the really heartbreaking part of the deep dive, she never got to see the finish line.
No, she didn't. Susan B. Anthony died on March 13th, 1906. She was 86 years old.
That's a long life of fighting.
It is. And she did get some recognition late in life. She celebrated her 80th birthday at the White House with President William McKinley.
So she went from arrested criminal to a guest of the president.
Quite an arc. But Resolution 9, the vote, was still unfulfilled when she passed. The 19th Amendment wasn't ratified until 1920, 14 years after her death.
But they call it the Susan B. Anthony Amendment.
They do. And rightly so. She didn't cross the finish line, but she built the road. Her last public words were, "Failure is impossible." She knew the machine she built was unstoppable.
So let's synthesize this for everyone listening. We started with the stern lady on a coin, but what we found is a strategist who understood the long game.
A woman who knew that real change doesn't happen with one protest. It happens with organizations, with newspapers, with mergers, and with showing up before Congress every year for 4 decades.
It's the difference between having a cause and having a plan.
Anthony had both. She had the deep Quaker conviction, and she had the political savvy to navigate the messy reality of 19th century America.
So what does this all mean for us today, for the learner listening to this?
I think one big takeaway is the power of complementary partnership. Anthony wasn't the best writer, but she found Stanton. She didn't try to be everything. She leaned into her strength organization and partnered for the rest.
Find your Stanton or find your Anthony. Don't go it alone.
Precisely. And the second thing is the power of the long game. We live in this world of instant gratification. We want our tweets to change the world overnight.
Yeah, success is just the victory lap.
Right. And Anthony's life teaches us that real structural change is a grind. It's about showing up when you're tired, when you're 80 years old, when you've heard no 1,000 times. Success is the consistency of the effort.
The source material poses a really great question at the end that I want to leave everyone with.
I know the way you mean.
Just as Susan B. Anthony was inspired and acted on her belief, what are you inspired to do?
It's a call to action. Anthony fought for Resolution 9. That was the impossible mountain of her time. The question for us is, what is your Resolution 9?
That hits hard.
What's the thing that looks impossible today, the thing everyone says is too radical, but that you know is necessary? And are you willing to spend 40 years on it, even if you don't see the victory yourself?
It's easy to look back and applaud her. It's much harder to look forward and emulate her.
Failure is impossible, but only if you don't quit.
That's a heavy question, but a good one. Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the architect of equality.
Always a pleasure to look at the machinery behind the history.
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.